I think there is a change in awareness among many of the people, not so much in a lot of other people. But one of the things that's driving this change is that we're reinventing our technology, our way of communicating with each other in the world. We're already now officially seeing the beginnings of quantum computing. Where that's going to lead in the next decade or two is going to be an amazing thing. Advanced artificial intelligence is right around the corner, advanced nanotechnology. Advanced 3D printing. There are a number of things here that are going to be giving people tremendous amounts of power that could be really decisive in the relationship with the formal power structure. As I see it, nothing's given. We're not definitely headed toward utopia, but we could be headed for a better world. We could be headed for a worse world. It's a race, as I see it, between a kind of encroaching global totalitarianism on the one hand, and the real possibility of freedom on the other.
Yeah, Michael, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, the fact that I mentioned that we are more enslaved now than ever before, it's a recognition of it, so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
We're recognizing that this is happening, and with that recognition comes a recognition of what it is we're supposed to do. Okay. And that's the aha moment that all of us, I believe, are experiencing to some extent or another.
Yeah, Linda.
And the force of Earth changes alone may literally define what the non-humans and the human governments are going to be able to do or not do, because for those of you who have heard my presentations about the sounds that may be related to changes in the core that could lead to a pole flip, the consequences of a magnetic pole shift could be quite serious, because if the magnetic field goes down towards zero and stays there as it did in the last one, unstable for 2,000 years, once a magnetic field goes down near zero, then more solar radiation, more gamma rays from the cosmos reach the surface of the Earth. And we know that that kills life. That would kill humans to a certain degree, and animals and plants. And right now, what is beginning to be discussed in scientific papers is this is the century that for the first time in 786,000 years, the North Pole will end up in the Antarctic if this happens, and the South Pole will end up in the Arctic, and that there will be a period of great instability in the magnetic field of this planet leading up to, that's now. And so, if we are headed into that kind of unpredictable and uncontrollable change, then depending upon what governments and non-humans, whatever their relationship is, they either may be forced out into the open because humans are really going to need a lot of help, or they will choose to keep everything silent and a policy of denial right up to the last second.
Besides that, I think this vibrational change, this shift, this increased solar radiation might have a positive effect where more people are waking up because of the subtle influences, and there's more. In the movie Solar Revolution, they say more DMT is being released in the brain, which is making us more of a visionary culture. So in the right degree of this cosmic radiation action, it could be, and I've seen it, and more people are waking up to a spiritual reality. And it's because our brains are awakening, that's what I feel, to a higher level. Do you think so, Victoria?
I believe that we are actually awakening different parts of the brain that we've never used before. I mean, remember, what do we use? What, 4% or something ridiculous? Does anybody know? Right, around approximately that much of the brain. So what's going on with the rest of it, right? So this is what I feel, is I'm seeing every day ordinary individuals out there suddenly knowing before the telephone rings, suddenly knowing before someone comes in the door, suddenly having dreams of what their future is going to be, suddenly realizing, coming to the realization that this reality that we're looking at right now really isn't what we thought it really was. It's like a dream. And when we break through this dream, we'll dream of yet another one. It's almost like another hologram, and it goes on and it goes on. But eventually we do come to the point where we realize and recognize that we're coming from a super intelligence. And we're sitting in this massive sea of love intelligence from which we've come, and as we awaken, we become part of that, and we get to choose what kind of reality we want to live.
Do you see that, Don? I mean, you're coming from the MUFON angle, but do you see, from your perspective, I'm not saying you should.
Actually, I don't come from the MUFON.
Oh, you don't?
I come from the QFOs angle.
Oh, QFON, yeah.
QFOs.
QFOs. Dr. Hynek, J. Allen Hynek, really one of the guys. But you see, because that's a practical approach, and then there's been mixing in with the more of a consciousness thing. Do you get what we're trying to say here?
I mean, certainly we've observed it over the last 3 days here.
Yeah. You
But
got
we
that.
also have seen that people have been walking around texting and on talking on their cells 24 hours a
Well,
day.
that's non-local
We'll go
communication.
back home, and I'm afraid that I'm going to again be smacked with reality because people are completely caught up as extensions of their machines. And as a result, I mean, now we're talking about cars that are going to drive themselves.
Okay.
Everything is being taken away from us that we don't even have to process or think about anything any longer.
Well, it's like fire. It has a good side and a bad side.
And
It's
to me,
technology.
this is what I feel we need to resist.
Okay.
Because as human beings, we are all unique. We all have something to offer to one another, and we're all here to basically help one another get through this life, which isn't as pleasant as we would like to believe it is.
But it can be. We are
It
living...
certainly, and that's when we worked as this event this weekend is with evidence.
Yeah.
That when we share this common bond.
Linda had a quick question.
But
and- yeah.
there really is a danger, to follow up what Don is saying. Ex Machina, how many people have seen Ex Machina? Not many, I'm surprised. It's quite an extraordinary film, not great, but the warning is the same warning that Bill Gates and Musk and Hawking are giving, that humans are right now on the brink of making intelligent robots that would basically, if they are successful, the benchmark would be that they would act like humans. And this Ex Machina Hollywood feature film really has parts of it that illustrate why they are warning, because there are tremendous amounts of dangers that could be coming in a world where, just exactly as Don has said, that the machines and the robots and the AI will become increasingly used and depended upon. And what will humanity do unless there is a gigantic acceleration to the curve of teaching humans more skills? And the disconnect between the AI world and the San Jose world is now so huge in the United States that it is now a huge social and political problem.
But we're learning more skills, things like remote viewing, things like sensing. I think these are attributes and human qualities are becoming online for a lot of us. Psychic perception. What were you going to say, Michael?
Well, I was going to just add to that, to what Linda was saying, learning more skills. To do that, we need to change the education system, unfortunately, and that comes into the heart of what I talk about and teach. Those that are interested in what we do, is until we change the education system, which is also created by design, as you know, by the banking families. The current education system is nothing other than creating a future labor force. It's got nothing to do with teaching skills for life. So if we need to teach ourselves and our children skills for lives, get your children out of school. Stop sending your children to these prison camps. They're going to turn them into what we are, and 20 years from now, they're going to be sitting here debating the same crap that we're debating today.
Well, that's about teaching them new skills. And why don't you talk about your experience with Joe Dispenza and opening up the brain and connect? What?
You were talking about schools and stuff. You know, I have a daughter that is just a genius, super genius. I mean, she was asking, Mom, at about 6 years old, Mom, what would happen if there was no time? And I'm looking down there and I'm like, whoa. I sent her to school, to film school. Now, understand, this is a kid. I got her a really nice camera and everything, and she was running around at like 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. She's doing it, right? She's running around, shooting everything. I sent her to school where they teach you, you've got to wait. You've got to wait till you're finished with school. You got to hold back, hold back, hold back. And what ended up happening is that these kids programmed their brains. They hardwire themselves for 4 years straight. That's like being a depressed individual for 4 years, constantly depressed. And all of a sudden that depression becomes a natural state to them. And then what happens is the body starts memorizing that natural state. And they, even if they wanted to wake up one day and say, I don't want to be depressed anymore, their body's already memorized it and said, hey, wait a minute. You break it by shutting down 3 parts of the brain and going into the frontal lobe. And this is where we're all going now. I believe that there is a chance, and how you do that is by, it has to do with spatial and meditation, and they teach it. There's a wonderful author, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he goes into all of this, and if any of you are interested. But seriously, I saw it with my daughter. You are right. She lost it. Now she's trying to climb back in, and although she's worked for all these big, places, she wanted to go out on her own to do it. Where she did it before, she didn't. She stopped. And now it's working for a company.
Yeah, school should be exciting.
It should be. I mean, this weekend was exciting for me. The information, right? It made me real. And the film last night, Packing for Mars, there's an exciting universe out there waiting for us. It really, really is exciting. And to get beyond the imprisonment and the enslavement and to open up and awaken humanity and the cosmos that's waiting for us, we're coming into, I think, the greatest time ever. And I do... Did you have something?
But what does it say when Stephen Hawking's now predicts that the only way man is going to survive on this planet is to evacuate over the next 100 years?
I'd rather talk to Danny Sheehan with the next octave of worldview and tell us what that looks like as we go into the new worldview.
Well, that actually, as we're going to be talking about tomorrow morning, that the new paradigm that a lot of people are talking about right now has to do with the evolution of this 6th new faculty that our human family has. This faculty that's able to directly and immediately experience the unitive phenomenon that bonds the entire universe together in a harmonious whole. That is the underlying experience that is now rising into the fore. What we need to do is to get in behind that particular process, affirm it, and basically not be ignorant about what the other dynamics are that are going on in the world, but just to atrophy them by staying in the affirmative vision of what it is that we're doing and opening up this new worldview. But we need to understand, there is yet an 8th paradigm worldview that is going to be coming up, which after we have direct open contact with the extraterrestrial civilization, are able to travel freely back and forth with their civilization and try to understand what they have come to understand and integrate that. There's an entire other worldview that is beyond the event horizon still to us. And so there's a lot of excitement to go in the human family. And when we finally open up, as I mentioned, that 8th chakra above our head, we may discover that chakra is synonymous with the root chakra of the whole next octave of being. And that there may be extraterrestrial civilizations that abide at that particular vibrational frequency. So this is going to be very exciting, getting to actually meet and deal with these folks. And it's just beginning right now. This is a very exciting period in our human family, just beginning to encounter both the rise of this new sixth faculty and the contacts that are now being talked about more openly with all the extraterrestrials. It's a very exciting time, I think.
I call it the flowering, thank you, the flowering of humanity. I see us awakening to who we really are. I mean, Richard, when you wrote AD and the consequences of coming forward with what Danny just mentioned, if you can just skip all those pages about the confusion, all that disruption, because it's already happening. The institutions we've created, medicine has been in the way of healing, and religion is in the way of spirituality. All the old institutions are in the way of the things they were created for, and that's part of what the UFO issue is bringing down, I think, in these old situations. But this new world, the new world view that Danny's talking about, after AD, after all the confusion of that comes forward and is settled, where are we then in your point?
I found that very intriguing, Danny. I enjoyed hearing what you had to say on that. I would only add, though, before we get to a place like that, we have some serious institutional obstacles to deal with. We're at a point in the world right now where the 80 wealthiest people in the world own as much wealth as the bottom 50% of humanity. where those individuals are trying to buy up all the water, all the minerals, all the genetically modified foods that they want to shove down your throat, and they want to own it all, and they're moving toward that. So it's a war. They're declared war really on the rest of humanity, and they want to own everything, including the people. And we have to find a way of dealing with that. Now, if spiritual evolvement by all the people on the planet does that, well, then great. But there's a lot of people in this world who are in grinding poverty, who are in misery and are being exploited. And we have some serious work cut out for us in the material realm right here. And then, dealing with other beings from other places, which I think most of us feel that is the case, that they're here. And as Stanton Friedman's pointed out many times, why would they want to deal with us when our main occupation is tribal warfare, and our main economic activity is creating war machines to kill each other? If I'm paraphrasing you more or less accurately, Stan, we have to transform that whole system. Otherwise, I don't really see much of a point in having a relationship with anyone else when we're destroying each other. And I will just say I have one point of being uncomfortable with some. I mean, I'm very, very interested in let us say consciousness studies, but I become a little bit unsettled by it when I feel that there's a movement away from the political. So
one of the great advantages that I might point out that I have is that that's what I've spent my entire life doing. I mean, I didn't represent the New York Times to get the Pentagon Papers published because I was trying to entertain
I get that.
people.
I mean,
what I'm saying is that I'm fully cognizant of all of these challenges, and that's one of the reasons that I feel that at this particular point in our human development, that it's possible for me to come forward to try to share with you the reasons why we should be optimistic, because I don't have any doubt that everybody knows that I know everything in spades that can be said this bad about our human family.
Well, I was certainly not accusing you, Dan, of being utopian.
No.
But I just feel like it's a tendency that we all have to watch for. There's a tendency in our culture to want to see everything as a happy ending, and the fact is, it could go either way. It really doesn't have to be a happy ending. It could be, for it to make it a happy ending, we have to do a lot of work. That's all I'm saying.
I personally feel that you can create your own reality. I'm sorry. I just feel that, because I experience it in my own life. You can't, you're a reflection of my mind. I'm a reflection of your own. So I know that in my heart, if I can raise my frequency to a certain thing, there are things that may exist for other people, pain, agony, and all that, but if I truly live in a certain frequency, I can resist it in a way that it doesn't really, it's not empowered.
But there's still war out there.
Oh, absolutely. We're not negating those things. I'm just talking about my relationship to it and how it affects me emotionally. That's what I'm just saying.
And I think if we raise ourselves, it'll still exist, those things. If we raise ourselves up and I think come from a more uplifting place, it helps. It may be, we still have to do the hard work, feed the people, and the wars.
We still have to confront evil.
Yeah.
We still have to deal with it. That's the thing. And I agree with Victoria that our way of thinking, our minds, do create the kinds of individuals that we will be. The way we think about ourselves is critically important. I'm just saying there's a danger, and I think really we have to be aware of this if we're going to be honest with ourselves, which is that we can think all we want about raising our frequency, but there's still going to be 80 people in this world who are going to try to buy up everything that's worth owning. They're still going to try to keep us as a slave race.
Well,
and we have to do something about that.
Well, we are. I think we are.
So to add to what Richard is saying, that's exactly what I deal with, I guess, on a daily basis in South Africa. Dealing with people who live in absolute poverty, they have nothing, but that doesn't mean they're stupid. But that also doesn't mean they're highly conscious and highly spiritual. Mm. They just know that something is wrong and they want out of this misery and out of this situation. What they respond to very positively is not spiritual teachings, because they're not really wired to receive spiritual messages. They need help. They need to know that they get a loaf of bread and have a meal at the end of the day.
Right.
So you've got to balance this very, very carefully. You've got to continue on the spiritual path and the path of consciousness, but at the same time, you've got to deal with the hard, day-to-day facts of people's survival on all levels. And unfortunately, as Richard said, these 80 people that want to buy up and own the whole world, they own the whole world. They don't want to buy it, they own the whole bloody planet already.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as long as we have this thing called money in our existence, they're going to continue owning the whole world. So there's a series and sequence of events that need to happen here. We need to disempower them by stop allowing them to use this, or by stop using the money that they're using to buy up the whole world, which gives them the power, creating a new alternative for humanity, for the people, which is what we're doing with the Ubuntu movement, but at the same time giving the people on the ground the good news that there is a way out. And I am right at the cutting edge of this every day, where hundreds of people in our town are waking up and realizing that there is a way out. And this is spreading like wildfire to our neighboring towns, where into running up to next year's local elections, people are suddenly realizing that there is hope, that we can get out of this. And it comes back to what Richard was saying, the political solution. You're not going to do this by creating ground movements and singing Kumbaya around a bunch of trees. You're going to do it by doing that at the same time by creating a political alternative. So from the top down and from the bottom up. And I can see this happening on a daily basis, providing real solutions and answers to people that know they're going to have a loaf of bread at the end of the day. And they're going to move away from the slavery system, from understanding that the government is not their friend, that they're actually trying to keep them there, and giving them the way out of that misery. And it's happening and working so well. It's blowing my mind, actually.
Well, thank you for doing. Don, you had something to add? No, that's
Okay. There's one thing we haven't mentioned. There are many things we haven't mentioned, but I'm concerned about when we talk about dealing with, negotiating with, whatever you want to call it, with other civilizations. We still live on a planet in which there is no government that wants its citizens to owe their allegiance to the planet. That's the way we are. Our nationalism is the only game in town. And yes, the 80 rich guys get by that to some extent. But, do you know of any country that wants its people to be as concerned about the planet as they are about their own country?
But that's changing. Environmentalism.
Is it really?
I think a lot more people are aware that we're one planet, and that pollution doesn't exist just over a country.
Who speaks for the planet? Who is able to negotiate for the planet in dealing with aliens?
I think all of us. All of us. What were you going to say, Don? We'll get back to...
I don't mean to keep sounding as though I'm playing devil's advocate, but even on what Stan just said, this idea that we have this trickle-down effect as far as from the media, and being told only what they want us to know. And I often refer to the media, that everything is scripted, as though the whole world has become professional wrestling.
Right.
And I think back to when we were on Montel Williams at one time, and all he kept asking pertaining to the UFO situation was, well, how does that put meat on my plate?
Right.
Yeah.
That he just couldn't think beyond, today. The idea that anything that would expand his horizons, his concept of his own world, let alone the universe, he just could not comprehend. And I'm personally afraid that's still the majority of people in this world.
Yeah, but if we're confronted, like a lot of people, with this phenomena up close, I think it changes people's ideas of their relationship to their country and the world.
If they have the access to the truth, and that's where, unfortunately, in relying to the media, most people still depend on them for their daily dose of reality.
But this is grassroots here. There's what, 2,500 people there this weekend, something like that? It's growing. The grassroots movement is growing. But let me just change gears for one quick second. And what, did you have something to say about that? Because I wanted to talk to you, Stanton Friedman. You've been doing this for how long? 60?
Gave my first lecture in 1967.
1967. Now
48 years.
40.
Wow.
What? Yeah. Maybe you'll get next year's Lifetime Achievement Award, right?
I've had a couple.
What is the passion in you? What is it that kept you going for all these years, and you're still going. You're still as passionate today as when you began, I'm sure, however long ago that was, 67. What is your passion?
My passion is because I am influenced by my children to be looking toward the future for them, a better world for my great-grandson, for example. And they just visited, and it's kind of a powerful recognition when you see a 7-year-old, what kind of a world will he grow up in? And I've always been convinced that knowledge is better than ignorance, but that, you know, it's a trite phrase. Have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. And so I was a high school debater. I learned that you don't mess with the truth. I've debated on Coast to Coast and won. I know that may not be too difficult considering the opponents, but what I'm saying is I find that people are turned on by the truth, but you got to show them. You can't just tell them. And I have been very pleased on certain occasions when somebody in the audience says after my lecture, how about polling this audience? I had shown some Gallup poll data. And I said, well, I don't usually ask my audience to stick their necks out. That's my job. Well, I don't think anybody will mind. Everybody clapped, so we did that. Better than 90% of that audience agreed that some UFOs are extraterrestrial spacecraft. 90%. This is after I gave them a long lecture, of course. But still, what I'm saying is people can be reached with facts and with data. But the kicker is, what do we do about it? This is where governments get into the act. You know, on two different levels. The government's got all the equipment for making good measurements of UFO characteristics. You know, radar, spy satellites, gun cameras, etc. That all belongs to the government, and they're perfectly free to do what they please with the data. But what has changed is that people are now ready to say, hey, gee, I don't think we're the only ones around. There are a lot of people who said that, very important people who said that 100 years ago, 50 years ago. This is the only solar system there is. We're the only planet that has actively thinking, building people today. That's it. Aren't we great? Now I hear over and over again from young people, surely we're not the only ones around. And surely we're not the best ones around. And gee, what an exciting time to be alive when we recognize that there's more out there than what we can see here. But how to get from here to there? That $1 trillion military budget this year beats the heck out of doing anything useful about this kind of thing. And we're the courageous schools of journalism. Linda, you run into their products. Is anybody doing anything to change that? You know, take an oath of allegiance to the truth for every journalist. That'll be the day. Yeah.
But you know, Stanton, you're an example of being empowered, not being stopped. You keep going. You keep putting it out there, and more people are waking up because you've talked on every university in the country about this. No, really, you've tirelessly been there, giving people the truth, and because of you, I would say some people here, a lot of people have woken up to that truth.
Well, I hope so, but
yeah.
There's a lot more to be done, and we need more people doing it.
Yeah, Linda, were you going to say something? Because I also, well, what I was trying to get at with this question is that the passion in these panelists and all of us for the truth is what's driving this sort of greater consciousness to arrive here. So I'm just curious in that, in what, you know, like, Don, you've been on the Rodwell case for years and years. It's nonstop, new piece of information comes. But what is it? What is that? What awakens in you when you hear that truth about Roswell, for instance?
Well, especially in my case, starting out as a skeptic.
Oh.
And with the full acceptance or the confidence that a single trip to New Mexico would wrap this up in a single weekend.
When was that?
What an optimist.
And that was after Stan had encouraged me that there were still hundreds of witnesses left to track down and interview.
And I couldn't afford to do it.
I couldn't either, but thanks for that.
So Stan told you to go to Roswell.
No, but I mean, I had approached him about whether he had felt that they had taken the cases as far as they could. If they